Welcome back everybody, my name is Tucker, and in today's video we're once again talking about the New York Knicks. I feel like I talk about this team like every single week, but I actually have another really fun video coming out for them a little bit later on as well, where I say something positive about every single player on their roster. But in this specific video, we're talking about the rumors surrounding their new coaching hire, potentially being Tom Thibodeau this offseason. But really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy the NBA, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day. Even when it's snowing and I don't have Wi-Fi and I have to go to Starbucks to get Wi-Fi, I upload basically every single day. All right, so let's talk about Tom Thibodeau as a coach and his head coaching career. Got off to a very good start. He was someone that had a very, very good reputation as a Boston Celtics assistant coach, thought of very highly specifically on the defensive end, moved on to Chicago and became the head coach of a couple of really, really good Bulls teams. They won 45 games every single year that he was there, but he started to get the reputation of a guy that not only can rub certain players the wrong way, not all of them, but certain personalities are not in love with Tom Thibodeau, and also running his players into the ground and not necessarily being all that modern with his minutes usage of his players, most specifically his star players. So things don't work out in Chicago, they move on, they go to Fred Hoiberg, and then the Timberwolves decide that they need an old school type coach that's going to toughen up their younger players, that's going to lead their young, talented team to the postseason, so they bring in Tom Thibodeau. Does that last situation sound at all familiar to the New York Knicks? Now, I would argue that the Knicks aren't nearly as talented now as the Timberwolves were then when Thibodeau got there, most specifically because Karl-Anthony Towns has the talent, not necessarily is, but has the talent of a top 7 to 10 player in the entire NBA, even if he hasn't shown that on a consistent basis, and I wouldn't argue that the Knicks have any player on the roster that has the talent of a top 10 player at any point in the league. But if you're a Knicks fan and you're trying to be positive about this potential hire of Tom Thibodeau, which is heavily rumored, Leon Rose, the new guy in charge in the front office in New York, used to be Thibodeau's agent. There's a connection there, and it seems like there's actual rumors that maybe they're talking about this, they're feeling it out, they're seeing if it could actually work. If you're a Knicks fan and you're trying to be positive about this, you're saying that this is exactly what this young team needs. They need a guy that's going to whip them into shape, that's going to provide discipline, that is an experienced head coach that has had success as a head coach in the NBA, is going to get them to play hard defensively, and is going to be the mentoring presence that they needed, right? The problem with that argument is that that's kind of what David Fizdale was supposed to be, right? He was more of a player's coach, someone that guys, enjoyed being around, but was supposed to provide discipline and kind of whip this young group into shape. That didn't happen at all. Now, the counter-argument to that counter-argument is that Tom Thibodeau has a longer track record of success as an NBA head coach than Fizdale ever did when he got the job. He'd been a head coach, but wasn't necessarily wildly successful, and certainly not as successful as someone like Thibodeau that didn't have the postseason success, but in terms of the regular season was really, really good. So those are the two sides to this, right? You're either saying this is exactly what this team needs. He's a guy that's going to, get these young players and mold them and really get them to be professionals, right? He's going to get RJ Barrett and Julius Randle to be on the same page. He's going to get them to play hard, going to get them to play together, and probably play them like 47 minutes a game until their 4th year in the league. But that's the argument there. The other side is it hasn't worked with the last young team that he was with in Minnesota. And if you wanted this disciplinarian type coach, well, David Fizdale was supposed to be that as well. So two sides to the argument. The other issue here is that there are players on the New York Knicks roster, most specifically Julius Randle, that have openly said that they are really enjoying being coached by Mike Miller, the interim coach. Now, that could just be lip service. He could just be saying it publicly because he wants good vibes around the team. He was also in trade rumors around that time, so maybe he wanted to be in good graces of the team. I don't know, but it is at least worth mentioning that presumably the best or one of the best players on the roster really likes the current interim coach. Now, I don't think it's all that likely at all that Miller ends up being the coach beyond this season, simply because the Knicks are going to try and go after a bigger name like Tom Thibodeau or someone else, but it is at least worth mentioning that it seems as though at least a few of the players do enjoy the guy that is currently the coach. Now, I say all of this to say, I want to say that it's not all that likely that Tom Thibodeau becomes the head coach of the New York Knicks. Because of the points that I've made to this point in the video, it doesn't seem like a great fit. It seems like they need to go in a different direction from the old school disciplinarian type that Fizdale was supposed to be and that Thibodeau would be, presumably. This is a guy that has not modernized his approach at all, at least if you're going off of his experiences in Minnesota in terms of his minutes, in terms of his offense, in terms of connecting with young players, and those seem to be the three primary needs needs for New York, specifically the development of their young players. And it doesn't appear as though he was very good at any of those things in Minnesota. Pretty much across the board, it didn't seem like anybody was all that happy to have him there if they were 24, 25 years old or younger. There were other guys like Jimmy Butler that maybe were really excited to have him there, but that's not really what you're going for in New York. You want the younger players to buy in. Having said that, would I be surprised if they hired Tom Thibodeau tomorrow or this offseason? Absolutely not, because it's the New York Knicks, because following this point-to-point, hey, this doesn't make sense mindset is just not what they do. They go for the flashy name. If you want to call Tom Thibodeau a flashy name, they go for at least the bigger name. They go for the guy that people know about. They go for what's going to look good in a headline rather than what actually works for their team. And it's kind of tough because there's not really that many really high-quality head coaching candidates out there right now that you would immediately say, hey, go get that guy, he'll be really good. Maybe you could go get an assistant from another team, but that doesn't necessarily work all that well in New York, given the environment, given the pressure. You'd want to have someone that has head coaching experience, right? Someone that has been in the hot seat before, that has been under the lights and has experienced that kind of pressure as a head coach at a different place, because obviously that's going to be elevated in a place like New York. So one name that does come to mind here is potentially Dave Joerger. Yorker? I'm sorry, I always mispronounce his name. He was the head coach of the Kings before he got canned and in place of Luke Walton now for Sacramento. He's someone that has been a head coach before, was really good with those younger players. With the Kings, they played a really, really fun style. They didn't make the postseason last year, but they were an up and down team. They played in transition, and that seems like it would be a really good fit in New York. A guy that has had success as an NBA head coach, maybe has had some rough relationships with some of the front offices and ownership groups that he's been with the past couple of places that he has been a coach, most specifically as a head coach in Sacramento. But that could just be a bad situation in Sacramento, not necessarily anything that he did incorrectly. And as we get to New York, maybe that would be a much better fit. And in my mind, that would be a much better fit than bringing in someone like Tom Thibodeau. Now, at the end of the day, you also have to consider the fact that even though, it's the head coach of the Knicks, right? And you would think that that would be a relatively valuable position, it's starting to become more and more clear that maybe guys aren't all that excited about coaching there because coaches get fired every year or two, and they don't want to work under James Dolan. Now, to be fair, as I said, it's still the head coach of the New York Knicks. It's still a desirable position, but I don't necessarily think that it's a guarantee that you're going to be able to get some big name guy just because you're the Knicks, and that maybe that's actually holding you down a little bit. So specifically in terms of Thibodeau, I think we can all agree that it's probably not the best fit, right? Like, this is a guy that has not demonstrated an ability at any of his coaching stops to modernize his approach. When he was with the Bulls, he was thought of as a very good coach because his style fit that era. He figured some things out defensively in terms of how to guard pick and rolls and how to get guys to really buy in defensively. That was really good in Boston and was really good in Chicago. And those things worked back when he was the coach of those teams. They don't work as well anymore, and he hasn't found a way to modernize his approach. And the Timberwolves weren't a very good defensive team. Now, to be fair, all of this stuff that I'm saying negatively about Thibodeau's time in Minnesota, you could go back and just say, okay, all of those young players were soft. It's their fault. They haven't been good with any coach, much less someone as experienced as Thibodeau. So, what is he really going to do there? It's probably not his fault. Okay, that's probably fair. That it's not all on Thibodeau that things didn't go well in Minnesota, and I'm sure a lot of those young players could have bought in more than they did, and then the situation just went completely haywire with the Jimmy Butler situation, right? But you still would have expected them to be better defensively than they were. And Karl-Anthony Towns has never been on a good defensive team in his entire career. So again, you can blame some of that on the players. But that was the whole point of bringing in Thibodeau, or at least part of it was to provide this discipline, but also to bring this defensive scheme or just this really good defensive mind, right, to try and fix that end of the floor for that team. And it never happened. So I don't really understand the logic here of going after someone like Tom Thibodeau for the New York Knicks. It doesn't seem like a great fit. It doesn't seem like what this team needs. It seems like they either need another guy like Dave Joerger that is better as a coach in the modern NBA and has shown recent success with a younger team that has been really bad this season, by the way, in the Sacramento Kings, but was really good, or at least for their standards, really good under his leadership last year with 39 wins. They either need someone like that, or they need a younger assistant coach from another team that they think can do well in New York and in that market that will connect a little bit better with these young players and develop them properly, because primarily that's what is going to potentially push this team to be at least somewhat interesting over the next handful of years. If the free agency stuff doesn't work out, which, spoiler alert, the free agency stuff isn't working out, then they need some kind of developmental process that works. because that's really the only way that they're going to get better if they don't get free agents. They need their younger players to improve. They need a bit of lottery luck, and then they need to be able to develop their guys into all-star caliber players despite where they were drafted, right? Like, they need Mitchell Robinson, they need RJ Barrett, they need Julius Randle, they need those guys to develop into high-quality winning basketball players and then get a couple of good lottery picks and then go from there. I don't think Tom Thibodeau is the guy to do that. He's going to play Taj Gibson 30 minutes a night, and he's going to play, whatever other veterans they have on the route. Alfred Payton's going to play like 40 minutes a night, and RJ Barrett's going to be sitting in the corner for 20 minutes a game asking for the basketball. That's how I think it's going to go if Tom Thibodeau is hired in New York. So I think it's an awful idea. It sounds completely on brand for the New York Knicks. I was about to say no offense, but that's not even offensive at this point. That's just true, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they hire him. But going in that direction of bringing in someone like Thibodeau makes absolutely no sense to me for this Knicks team, or really any modern NBA team, unless they're like a proven contender and their coach just randomly up and retires and they've already established that culture and he can just come in and bark at these guys and try and bring some level of championship pedigree. Unless that's the situation he's going into, I don't really see how he's going to have success as an NBA head coach based off all of his past experiences and his complete inability to adapt and modernize to the modern NBA. But there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.